Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 09th March 2016. The first article is related to Aadhaar versus right to privacy. Now, the context is a bill is introduced in the parliament that is Targeted Delivery of Financial and Other Subsidies, Benefits and Services Bill 2016. The objective of the bill is stated as efficient, transparent and targeted delivery of the subsidies to the citizens. We already know that there is JAM Trinity for us. The objective of the JAM Trinity is to streamline the subsidies. In this, A stands for Aadhaar. In today's improvement of governance, the government is more and more relying on Aadhaar and technology. So everywhere, the big data will be a question towards the privacy. So the challenges before this are data protection and to provide for legitimacy to collect the information from the citizens. So the parliamentary approval gives the greater legitimacy for the Aadhaar. In this context, Aadhaar bill is more introduced as a money bill rather than an ordinary bill. So it means the scope of Rajya Sabha is going to reduce in making a decision for Aadhaar Act. So why can't the government go in a bipartisan way, involve all the political parties to take an action on this, and why it wants to give or else impose its numbers on the opposition is the first question. And second is, already Supreme Court made it clear that Aadhaar shall not be made compulsory for the subsidies. The argument goes like this: the privacy, if it is a fundamental right, so the people who are dependent on the subsidies, they are compromising on their privacy in exchange for the getting benefits from government. So the rights are not exchangeable, and if Aadhaar is seen as violative of right to privacy, and if right to privacy is a part of Article 21 of the Constitution, then Aadhaar making it compulsory will lead to the rights being bargainable or exchangeable. So the third thing is the data privacy. So there are certain protections with regard to the data privacy. Any information that has to be taken, it needs the permission of the officer above the joint secretary. But however, there are certain exceptions provided, that is national security. So these exceptions can prove when they are not being properly defined dangerous. So these three things need to be addressed. Then what is the conclusion? Yes, we need Aadhaar not just to improve the public services. The success of the Aadhaar also depends upon to what extent the rights of privacy of the citizen are protected. So in the world of today's cyber security challenges, we need to provide or protect the big data which is collected from the citizens. If not, it has many adversarial consequences. Now coming to the climate change issues. We all know that till date we have focused on mitigation. Now the author suggests for why can't we shift our understanding towards the climate engineering. So what is this climate engineering is? Till now we are focusing on reducing the carbon production. So why can't we limit whatever the carbon produced, or why can't we send it back for other purposes? So carbon collection and storage, sequestration or carbon capture and sequestration, all this comes under the same climate engineering. Second is forestation is also comes under climate engineering. This appears to be relatively very safe. On the other hand, we have solar radiation management, in which the heat entering into the earth will be disturbed in between and reflected back into the space. So in this case, you have to create a barrier. For this purpose, one of the important mechanism which is suggested is stratosphere aerosol injection. So under this, SO2 is being sent into the stratosphere, and this SO2 particles will reflect the light. So in this context, what are the dangers involved? This SO2 can cause something called acid rains onto the earth, and it may have many other untoward consequences which are not still verified. So author says that there shall be a proper governance structure towards adopting these technologies or to conduct the research on these technologies. So, it is the time we look into the alternatives to mitigate the climate change. Though there are certain minimal evidences, when a volcano erupted in Philippines, it has released the SO2 into the stratosphere. Because of this, there is a cooling down of the earth. But however, it also has changed the precipitation patterns. So we need to understand what are the untoward consequences of this mitigation, this particular engineering techniques, and if necessary, if proven, then they can be adopted into our climate change regime. Coming to this universities, we have discussed enough in the last some 10 to 12 articles about the universities, and let us understand just one or two points over here with regard to this. Now, I can say that we need to bring in inclusive nationalism in the country. Gandhi and Nehru has prescribed for the inclusive nationalism, which has to keep or which has to respect the pluralism of this country. So for this inclusive nationalism, 2 points are very critical. One is respecting the role of the civil society and protecting for the diversity of the nation. And second is, universities are the places where there is a critical thinking and alternative way of life develops. So universities has to be the inclusive spaces, and any threat to these things, then democratic polity cannot work on the sound principles. These are the two carry home points. There has to be a space for the civil society for dissent, and the universities shall be the places of an inclusive pluralistic culture of the country. Now coming to the cyber security architecture. So we all know that there are different forms of the cyber threats are growing. One is cyber espionage, where our establishment, there will be data theft from our critical establishments. And then cyber crime, cyber attacks, cyber war. All these are the different levels of threat with regard to the cyber security are concerned. Now, what are the steps which are taken up by India? India has launched the cyber security policy in 2013, and then it brought in National Cyber Security Coordinator in the Prime Minister's office in 2014. So, though these steps are there, they do not provide for a clear plan of action on installing the cyber security in India. So, and the cyber security is also different from the nuclear security. In cyber security, you cannot differentiate between the military and civilian safety. And the second is, the cyber security is highly asymmetrical. So in this context, we have to bring in a complete strategy as like the nuclear doctrine, and also an agency to take hold of the cyber security in the country. So the author recommends for National Cyber Security Agency. So what it has to do? It has to coordinate the functions of the different agencies providing the cyber operations. Now, you know that NTRO, National Technical Research Organization, NatGrid, National Information Board, all these are involved with the functioning of the cyber security. So coordination of these actions have to be the responsibility of cyber security agency. And next is, it also has to develop a deterrence. It means the cyber security offense capabilities. So this offense capabilities acts as the deterrence to the other countries to attack our cyber establishments. Finally, international level, it has to develop India's argument towards cyber restraint, or to have the restraint in the cyber world that has to be advocated by this particular agency, and necessary ground has to be developed for the same purpose. Coming to the corruption. So in the cases of corruption, there are few issues we need to understand. The first is, in 2013, Supreme Court gave a judgment. So what is that about? The Supreme Court has said that any person who is convicted of an offence, he will be immediately disqualified. Previously, the 3 months of the period is available during which he can appeal in the higher court, and his matters are pending in the higher court, he will not get disqualified. So this luxury is taken away, and any person who is convicted, he will be disqualified now. And the second is, in 2013 itself, A person who is convicted, he will be immediately disqualified to continue as an MP or MLA. In 2014, it said that the corruption charges against the legislatures, they have to be finished within 1 year time frame. So it means the government, the Supreme Court is actively looking about ending the corruption. Now, the Supreme Court went further ahead and said, do we need to wait till a person convicted to disqualify him? Why can't we disqualify when the charge is framed against him? So this is what is the Supreme Court has posed a question, and it referred to the constitutional bench. So in these matters, let me explain you this. So the right to representation for an individual and right of the citizens for clean representation, if they come together, the right of citizens for clean representation has to prevail over an individual right to represent the people. So in this context, any law, it has to balance two things. A honest man on whom the frivolous charges of corruption are laid, he shall not be disqualified. At the same time, a corrupt man shall not be entering into the representation sphere. So balancing this is very critical for the success of anti-corruption strategy. Now coming to the NPT, now there is a small island in Pacific Ocean, that is Marshall Islands. It filed a case against nuclear weapon states including India on lines of global disarmament and for not adhering to the test ban treaty, etc. So India has replied that it is not a signatory of NPT and it is not legally binding onto it. Coming to this, Libya. Don't read this article, just remember one point. Wherever there is statelessness, the state structure is destroyed, there the violence is bound to increase. And ISIS is taking deep roots into Libya because of the failure of the state or absence of the state structure. So in this context, what the author argues is this: unless the non-jihadist forces and also forces fighting the terror, especially the ISIS, that is the Russians, Americans, everyone, if they don't come together against the ISIS, this menace will continue. It is the time it has to be put in our control or put on control. Now coming to the EPF, already we discussed enough. So Employment Provident Fund, our budget has imposed a tax on withdrawal of 60% of the funds from EPF account. The objective was to bring in EPF along with the National Pension Scheme and also to encourage the people to invest in annuity which can provide them the pension at the retirement. So to create a pensionized society, a parity was brought in between EPF and NPS. So in this case, what it said, in the normal cases it will be taxable if it is withdrawn, but if it is invested in the annuity, it will not be taxed for, so that the money will be diverted for annuity. So in this context, the reaction from the opposition and also the employee groups made the government to withdraw the tax. But however, it has said the 40% tax reduction which was given for the investment made in NPS, they will continue. So what the finance minister said is this: in India, EPF is chosen as a fund because of the tax benefits it gives. If the tax benefits have to be diversified, or if other funds also have to be developed, the tax benefits acting as an anchor to a particular fund has to be done away with. The merit of the fund has to guide the people towards the taking off or making the investments into that funds. Next, coming to the Maria Sharapova, she was suspended after the dope test. Now, you know that doping, our World Anti-Doping Agency, it has suspended the Maria Sharapova, and who is a 5-time Grand Slam winner, for testing positive with regard to the banned drugs. So, mildronate, it was included in the banned drugs in January 2016, and her failure to move away from this has made her susceptible to this test. So these are the news of today. Thank you very much. Let us discuss about yesterday's question, that is women. So in this, what it was talking about is the panchayats have specifically made certain progress after women representation has increased. First, if I am in your position, I will talk about what is the progress made in panchayats, especially with regard to the issues related to girls and the SHG movement, and also other externalities in the family level, that is nutritional improvement and education in the schools. All these things and anti-liquor movements, all these things we can talk about. And after this, you can talk about why we need to extend these reservations to the that is state legislatures and member that is parliament. So while making this argument, also give the counter arguments in the third paragraph. So don't forget to include the representation of women to the empowerment. So representation and participation are critical to the political empowerment. And political empowerment also has its overlapping with the economic empowerment. The counter argument is also this. The concept of empowerment cannot be reduced to reservations. Empowerment has to be seen much beyond the reservations, where the capabilities of the people have to be raised and their voice, choice, human dignity, and social equality, all these are integral to the empowerment. So this concept also has to be covered. In India, are we reducing the empowerment to the concept of reservations? If you try to cover all these things, that will become a good answer. And one of the students has asked me to cover the question every day, and probably I'll spend 1 or 2 minutes on doing that. Thank you very much. All the best.